Hi, I'm Ryan, and welcome to English Learning Adventures. So I just wanted to do a quick take on English's role in the world in 2025. There's a lot of new tools out there like AI that means that it's particularly easy. It's never been easier to communicate in English, even if you don't have particularly good English skills. You can use AI and ChatGPT to sort of improve your emails. You can use it to improve your writing. You can even use it to improve your speaking skills. But it can be a crutch. And what that means is that you can start to rely on these tools a little bit too much, and you can start to lose some of your communication skills because of these AI tools that are now available. So I'm not saying they're a bad thing. I'm not saying don't use them. I just think that English, real world English communication between two people is still important and still relevant in 2025, and we can't discount that. You need to be studying English and you need to be proficient in English to communicate in a business setting or in an academic setting. So, yes, I think English is still just as relevant in 2025 as it was 10 or 15 years ago. That said, the ways that we study English are changing, and I think we're getting better at studying English. I've been teaching in different academic settings for many years. I've got almost 20 years of teaching experience. And in that time, I've seen a lot of different learning styles in a lot of different countries. And one of the things that's often done is the idea of rote learning, which is just simple memorization. And this is good. You need to do it in English to memorize things like vocabulary patterns and grammar patterns. But I don't think you should rely on it. I think you should be concentrating on efficient communication between two people. It's better to speak 100 words and be able to hold a small conversation than it is to speak 1,000 words but not really understand how to use those and not be able to put them together efficiently. So you need that vocabulary. You absolutely need to be using things like Anki Web or other kind of deck-based flashcard apps out there that are really good to build your vocabulary, but you also need to be doing it in a way that is memorizable and usable. So I highly suggest you build sentences. So when you learn a piece of vocabulary, make a sentence with it, make a different sentence with it, make a third sentence with it. And there are tools that allow you to find these words easily. So a tool I highly recommend is one called Youglish. What you can do is you can search for a new word. So you put the word into the search dialog box and it will go through YouTube or TED Talks or whatever sources, and it will find people using that word in context. And it will actually give you different results. So you can search in British, you can search in American English, and there are differences in pronunciation. This is a tool that is kind of specifically geared to help you pronounce words in English, but it can be used for word memorization as well. You can listen to people actually using these words very, very quickly. So this is one place that technology really gives us a edge in the competition from, say, 10 or 15 years ago when we didn't have these tools. 10 or 15 years ago, we simply had to go into like reference dictionaries and we had to pull out the word and you'd get maybe one or two examples at best, but you can prompt ChatGPT. So if you learn a really complicated word like egregious, you can go into ChatGPT and you can say, define egregious for me. What does egregious mean? Give me some examples of how to use this. Build me a fill in the blank style exercise to practice use of the words that I've recently learned. And so these are great tools that will allow you to speak more efficiently and more communicatively. And so you should be using these tools for your English study. The same thing applies for grammar structures. So if you know that you have a problem with, for example, future perfect continuous, by the end of this year, I will be speaking English very well, for example, and you know you have difficulty speaking in that tense, you can go into ChatGPT and you can say, build me some exercises to practice future perfect continuous in English. And it's going to build you a nice set of exercises that you can repeat. And the key here is repetition. The more you repeat these things, the more you're going to commit them to your speaking patterns. I think reading is still a hugely underutilized way to learn English. I know a lot of my students do read, but too few of them read on a regular basis in English. And it's hard. It's not easy. You are reading children's books at the beginning and you're reading really simple things. But that repetition and seeing the way that authors use words is going to help you build vocabulary. It's going to help you build grammar structures. And probably even more importantly, it's going to help you with pronunciation because you can later get into things like audiobooks and TV and you can turn on the closed captioning, which is like this little thing here, that little dot that says CC. Turn that on for a minute and listen to me speaking. If you're reading these sentences that are now coming up on the screen, then you kind of listen to my accent patterns and the way I'm pronouncing things. And you also have your own internal dialogue going on at the same time. And if those things are mismatched, if you're pronouncing words in your head differently than I'm speaking them, that gives you a place to kind of flag or recognize a problematic piece of vocabulary. And so you can start building better pronunciation patterns by watching movies or watching YouTube videos or any kind of content that you consume. If you turn on that closed captioning, it will allow you to read and build a lot of those patterns at the same time. So read as much as you can. Find things that interest you. And if it's children's books in the beginning, then that doesn't matter. There are some really good, interesting children's books out there that will allow you to get to that next level with your English. One of the things that never changes is the idea of shadowing. Shadowing has been probably the best way to study a foreign language, and it remains in 2025 that this is the best way to study and to improve in a foreign language. Shadowing is really simple. It's not a difficult concept, but it just means repeating things over and over and over again. So get really simple sentence structures. Find videos that are specifically geared to storytelling. And what you're going to do is you're just going to listen to a sentence, you're going to pause, and you're going to repeat. Or you're going to try to repeat in real time with closed captioning on. This builds all of the skills in English. It builds listening skills, it builds speaking skills, it builds reading skills, maybe not writing so much, but it does apply to writing. So it's a really kind of well-rounded way to be speaking English better. So I encourage you to shadow everything you possibly can. Repeat over and over again these sentences and these patterns until you have the pronunciation correct, until you have the grammar pattern right, until you have the word structure and you know all of the vocabulary in that sentence. And once you're done that, you can extend the exercise and you can start to build sentences yourself. So take a grammar pattern or take a word and try to build your own sentences with this. If you're able to do this, you're going to be able to effectively communicate in English. So even in 2025, shadowing is still probably the single best way that you can be learning languages. Another great tool is to record yourself. Everybody has a camera these days, so you can just set your camera up. It doesn't need to be particularly good quality, but record yourself talking. It can be freeform. Just tell a story about what you did last week and listen back. This will allow you to kind of build an ear for grammar mistakes. It'll allow you to build your recognition of pronunciation problems that you're making. You can hear when other people are not quite speaking English perfectly or they have accents. Apply this to yourself, record yourself and listen for these things. And then shadow it as well. Shadow yourself and try to improve upon those things. So this access to cameras in 2025 that we all have is a great way to improve your English very, very quickly. There's a few reasons why recording yourself works really well. It's very difficult to activate the parts of your brain that are dedicated to listening and speaking at the same time. And so when you're speaking, you're kind of not listening to yourself, but when you record yourself speak, then you can really actively listen to yourself and you can listen to those vocabulary patterns. You can listen to pronunciation patterns. And this allows you to listen in a very different way than you are when you're just simply speaking. And not only that, it builds confidence speaking in English because it's not very nerve-wracking, or it doesn't make you very nervous to be speaking in front of a camera. It's not judgmental. Whereas if you're speaking in front of an audience of 500 people, that's a more difficult thing to do. So anytime you have like a big presentation that you have to make, presenting it to a camera is a good first place to start to really kind of build those patterns that you need to improve in English. And another way that you should be studying foreign language is with recall rather than recognition. Recall is the idea that you recognize words or patterns, but you don't necessarily know them. Recognition is this idea that you recognize certain vocabulary and you know it in context, and if somebody uses it in a familiar pattern, you're able to recognize it and you're able to recall it, but you don't necessarily understand it. Recall is a better way to approach English, where you are able to pull individual things out. If you use this in context, it's one way to recall the word, but to really understand it well, you can pull it out of context. So you might say something like, the garbage collectors in my city stopped collecting garbage this week because they've gone on strike. And I find it egregious that the garbage collectors have gone on strike. Well, why do you find it egregious? Well, the answer to that is because it smells really bad. The smell is coming into my apartment, and that's an egregious situation. So pull it out of context, and you can think, maybe I can use egregious for smells as well. So the smell of garbage this morning is egregious. That works. You can use egregious for smells. And again, you can cycle back to your AI tools. So get into ChatGPT this morning and say, is this a proper sentence? Does egregious make sense in this context? The smell of garbage this morning is egregious. And sometimes it might tell you, no, you can't use it in that way. And again, you can utilize these tools and you can say, why can't you use it in that way? And it will give you definitions and ideas of why you can't use it in that way. And if it doesn't give you other examples, you can always ask it for other examples as well. So even in 2025, a lot of the principles behind learning English or learning any language haven't really changed. You need to practice. You need some dedicated, serious practice time. Spend 15 minutes every day going through flashcards, spend 10 minutes reading something, spend another 10 minutes practicing speaking, even if it's just to yourself. Speak out loud when you practice to yourself, because this will help you build the pronunciation patterns that you don't get if you just speak internally and you use your internal voice. Use recall and start building different patterns every time you learn a piece of vocabulary or you learn a new sentence structure. Use AI tools to your advantage, but don't begin to rely on these as crutches. Of course, you can be polishing up your emails and making sure your grammar and sentence structure is perfect, especially if you're interacting in a business environment, but don't rely on them as a crutch. Don't let the AI do the writing for you. Do the writing and let it teach you where the best patterns are. Use those shadow and recall exercises that we talked about earlier. And of course, one of the best ways to quickly improve is still to hire a tutor and get some one-on-one interaction in English. Even if you're completely immersed in an English language environment, a tutor will point out things that other people won't. They are trained to recognize patterns that other people would just let slip. So things like pronunciation patterns where it's good enough, I understand, I don't need to fix your English. A tutor doesn't take that approach. A tutor will say, okay, it's good enough. I understand. Let's improve. Here's how we can improve that pronunciation, or here's a better word, or here's a different context you can use these words in. So having a tutor once a week is still a really good idea in 2025. And there are some AI tutors out there, but it's no replacement for a real person. So in closing, English is still relevant in 2025, and there are a lot of tools that can make your English studying much better and much more efficient. So you can be a little bit lazier in your study. you can study smarter and not have to study quite as hard as you had to 10 years ago to speak English well. Thank you very much. I'm Ryan. This is English Learning Adventures, and if you like what I do, give me a like and follow. It really helps me and it helps my channel.